What's up, everyone? Welcome into another edition of our NBA DFS DraftKings Picks podcast. This time for Wednesday, December 29th. I'm your host, Justin Bales, joined by our NBA coach, Spike. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for asking.
Before we get into it, this is my first back from the whole holiday break. Not that we actually had a break off. Sriracha handled all the podcasts during the entire holiday weekend, though. So shout out you, Sriracha, if you're watching. Completely destroyed it. For everyone else, hopefully you guys had a great Christmas, great holiday season, all of that good stuff. One thing I did learn, and if you are strictly here for the NBA takes, fast forward a few minutes because this is just something that I have to know from everyone, including Spike. He's here to talk about it. Everyone else just really wondering about this because I never knew. Have you ever heard of Tim Tams?
No.
It's like a chocolate dessert type thing from Australia.
Okay.
I have my fiance has family in Australia, sent some Tim Tams. Apparently you can get them in the United States. There are some grocery stores. I don't know. I've never seen them in my life. We tried them and they are a game changer. Anyone watching this, do we have any people from Australia here that you just happen to know what they are and they're like your favorite dessert or something? Or does anyone else know about Tim Tams and I'm just a complete idiot that has never heard of this and wasted essentially almost 27 years of my life not eating them? Also, go to the store, pick some up. They're one of the best desserts I've ever had. And they're just like a really bad dessert. Like it's like Oreos.
I'm going to have to go check that out tomorrow. Cool.
So, everyone else, if you're watching this and you have literally no idea what I'm talking about, pick some up. You can actually order them off of Amazon. They have like a variety pack. There's multiple ones. Life changer. I'm not joking. The last time my life has changed this good, outside of getting engaged, sweetheart.
Nice.
Now she watches the pod. I know she doesn't. But if she happens to see this, we're in the clear. Outside of that is a towel warmer. That is an A+ purchase. I would spend multiple hundreds of dollars on that. It doesn't cost that much to get one, but I would spend a few hundred on one of those. People actually are probably here for the NBA talk. I guess this is like an NBA show or something.
Something like that.
Yeah, we can get down to it. I'll start with the injury news. I did want to quick ask this of the viewers because I feel like you guys are the ones watching and it makes more sense for you to let me know how you feel about this. But it's just a ridiculous amount of injury news because there's so many players out with COVID protocols. We could see them changing with now the CDC changing it from a 10-day to a 5-day if you're not having any symptoms. It's a slippery slope of letting the NBA players call their own symptoms because literally none of them will tell the truth. They're just going to lie and say that they don't have any so they can come back in 5 days. But the NBA could shift to that. We've already seen the NFL do it. But for the time being, do you guys want me to read off all of the players that something is happening with, whether they're playing, not playing, or do you just want me to kind of discuss the players that are more questionable, even up to doubtful, rather than the players that are actually out? And then, if it really affects anything in players that we're talking about, you can kind of mention that. So post in the comments, let me know if you would rather me read everything in terms of injury or just essentially the questionables and stuff like that, because I don't want to keep reading all this injury news if you guys don't like it, because I don't like doing it either. It takes a long time. It's a lot of rambling. It's a lot of just a name and then saying out because there's so many guys out. But we can actually change that. If enough people want it changed to only the questionable stuff, we can change that for the next pod. If enough people want it to be all of them so they know all the injury news, no problem whatsoever. I can keep doing that too. That's not an issue at all. Just let me know. For tonight, I'm going to read through it. So bear with me because me and Spike already talked about this before we got on here. And Atlanta alone has, what did we say, 14 players out?
Yep,
14 players out, and there's 9 games. So let's get into this. Scotty Lewis, PJ Washington, Miles Bridges, all out for Charlotte. On the other side, Malcolm Brogdon, questionable. For the Knicks, Wayne Selden, Jericho Sims, Daniel House, Matt Mooney, all out, along with Nerlens Noel. For Detroit, Josh Jackson, Saban Lee, Isaiah Stewart, Killian Hayes, Corey Joseph, Cade Cunningham, Trey Lyles, Isaiah Livers, Rodney Magruder, and Kelly Olynyk, all out for them. Moving down more, Moses Wright, Isaiah Hartenstein, Reggie Jackson, Nicholas Batum, all out for LA. For Boston, you have Dennis Schroeder, Jason Tatum, CJ Miles, Ennis Freedom, Bruno Fernando, and Aaron Naismith, all out. Marcus Smart is questionable. Austin Reeves, Rajon Rondo, and Trevor Ariza, along with Kendrick Nunn, Kent Bazemore, and Wayne Ellington, have all been ruled out for the Lakers. It looks like Avery Bradley is back. He started last night. Then on the other side for Memphis, you have Dylan Brooks, Zaire Williams, Yves Pon, Santi Aldama, DeAnthony Melton, John Conchar, Sam Merrill, and Jarrett Culver, all out. Atlanta, here we go. This is just a ridiculous amount of players. But Wes Iwundu, Sharif Cooper, Danilo Gallinari, Timothy Luwawu Cabarro, Lou Williams, Onyeka Okongwu, DeAndre Hunter, DeLone Wright, Bogdan Bogdanovic, John Collins, Malik Ellison, Kevin Huerter, Gorgie Dang, Jalen Johnson, all out. Tony Bradley, Alonzo Ball, Alex Caruso, Ersan Ilyasova, Alfonso McKinney, all out for Chicago, with Derek Jones Jr. being questionable. Udonis Haslam, Kyle Lowry, Markieff Morris, and Max Struss. I guess along with Dwayne Dedmon, I forgot him, all out for Miami. And then you have PJ Tucker questionable, and I believe that Jimmy Butler is expected to pop up on the injury report as questionable whether to play. He played basically the entire game last night. I'm not sure if he actually hit the triple-double, but he was really close when I stopped watching the game, and he really just absolutely dominated. So he most likely, I'm assuming, is going to play in this game, but not confirmed yet. DeJounte Murray for the Spurs is out. Poku, I don't actually know how to say his name, and I'm not going to stumble over it here. Poku, Jeremiah Robinson Earl, Trey Mann, Darius Baisley, Derek Favors, and Josh Giddey, all out for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Ishmael Wainwright, Jay Crowder, Abdel Nader, and DeAndre Ayton, all out for Phoenix. You have Donovan Mitchell out once again for Utah. And then for Portland, Dennis Smith Jr., Trendon Watford, Robert Covington, Yusuf Nurkic, Ben McLemore, CJ McCollum, and Cody Zeller have all been ruled out for Portland. Willie Cauley-Stein, Trey Burke, Luka Doncic, Maxi Kleber, Tim Hardaway Jr., all out for Dallas. And then Davion Mitchell and Alex Len are out for Sacramento. I think it's also important to note that last night, Marvin Bagley started for Metu at power forward. We could see more of that moving forward. Not honestly sure at this point because the Kings are so weird with their lineups. But I would actually expect Bagley to probably start playing a bigger role in the offense, or I guess in the rotation overall. That does it. That is essentially everything that we had to get through in terms of injury news. Before we jump into the position by position breakdown, I do want to quick say, if you enjoy this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. You can turn on notifications by clicking the little bell so you don't miss any videos that we post. And comment any questions you have below, along with the stuff I asked earlier, so we can kind of make this video tailored to everyone that's watching it. But also the questions, Spike and I will be in the chat throughout the day to answer anything that you guys have, because obviously it's the NBA and stuff changes basically every 10 minutes at this point. You can find all of our content at dfskarma.com. That is also where you can get our core plays package, which gives you our premium content, projections, gets into our premium Discord, and then obviously you do get our core plays with that. We do have free content, again, dfskarma.com, or you can go to chatdfs.com to get into our free Discord, which just doesn't unlock the premium channels. You still get quite a bit of information, especially with all the injury news and all that good stuff. So I think that's everything. I think we can get to actually breaking down this slate now that we're nearly 10 minutes into this video. But starting at point guard, there are a lot of options. I will stop talking here. Spike, hit us with what you're looking at for point guard.
Yeah, man. Like you said, there's a lot of options at every position. So I'm going to try and limit it to a couple of my favorite plays. I guess we'll start off at the top here, and Trey Young, simply because of all the injuries. He's at 11K, so he's getting up there in price, but he's probably going to play close to 40 minutes. And if that game stays close, it's going to be because of him. So he's definitely worth a look in tournaments. You go down a little bit. LaMelo Ball gets a good matchup against Indiana. He's been getting a little better coming back from COVID. I think he's two or three games back now. And his price just is still kind of too cheap for the upside that he kind of possesses. So I'm definitely looking towards him if you're paying up. Move down a little more. You got Ja Morant at 8,800 against the Lakers. Their defense picked up a little bit, but still nothing I'm too worried about. And with the amount of injuries on that Memphis team, Ja's just going to have to step it up if they plan on winning games. You go down a little more. Mike Conley at 6,600. It's a pretty good matchup against the Trail Blazers, who are also just really depleted right now. And for some reason, Utah's actually relatively healthy. So besides Donovan Mitchell, and that's kind of why I like Conley so much for that price. If his shot is falling, there's double upside there with his assists. So that's something I'm looking at. Eric Bledsoe go down a little more at 6,400. As you say all the time, he's just a streaky player, and right now he's kind of hot. They kind of got into a blowout the other night, so he didn't get a lot of run in the second half. But I think they can keep this game close against the Celtics, and it's just a really good spot without Paul George. You go down a little more. Peyton Pritchard for the Celtics. He's only 5K. He's been playing so many minutes recently, and I'm pretty sure they're getting a couple of people back. But I still like him right now. He's really hot. You can go down a little more to Kobe White. I'm pretty sure Lonzo Ball's still out. This dude just really hasn't been producing at all. But at that price tag, if his shot's falling, he has tremendous upside. It's definitely a risk and more of a GPP play, but that's more or less where I'm at point guard.
Yeah, I think you said a lot of guys that I also like. Ja Morant really sticks out at only 8,800. There's some other guys. I do think that Derek White is really interesting, obviously, with DeJounte Murray out. He's coming off basically 45 fantasy points in his last game. Price really didn't spike all that much, but he is playing with the ball in his hands a lot. So at 6,800, I do think that Derek White is a really good option. I agree with Peyton Pritchard. I probably want to see Marcus Smart get ruled out before I really lock in Peyton Pritchard, especially with the price bump. Right above him, though, you have Gabe Vincent, who has been just playing extremely well. His shots looking really, really good. I do think that he's a really good option at 5,200. And really, you can drop pretty far down. When you look at someone like Derek Walton Jr., he just played, I believe, 31 minutes the other night. Detroit has no guards. They literally have no guards at this point. So Walton's going to play probably 30 minutes again. He scored almost 20 fantasy points, but he literally didn't score a single point. So the floor is roughly around there. He's only 3,400. If you don't really like him, you can drop slightly below to Brandon Knight, who, what a blast from the past that guy is. Finally back in the NBA. But 24 minutes in his last game, I would probably assume he plays around 20 to 25. I don't think he's necessarily safe. He is only 3,400, so it's going to be hard for him to really beat you. But at the same time, he posted 30-plus fantasy points in his last game, and obviously if his shot is falling, he does come with quite a bit of upside. So, a lot of salary relief at point guard alone, and obviously we're going to get into even more as we kind of continue. That's basically the name of the game at this point on a 9-game slate in the NBA. But moving to shooting guard, who are you looking at here?
So for me, there's obviously a lot of options, but there's a lot of options in the mid range that I'm really looking at. I was kind of trying to save Derek White for shooting guard, but that's okay. We'll start off at the top here. Zach Levine is 10,100. It kind of seems a little high, but it's a really good matchup, and if his shot's falling, it's there's just so much upside there. Double, maybe even a triple double. I'd probably leave that for more of a tournament play, but I still kind of like it. If you move down a little more, as soon as Tatum is still out, so Jaylen Brown makes a lot of sense here with no Paul George on the other side. It's kind of his offense to run still. And I think he has a little bit of a bounce back from his last game where he didn't really play too well. So I'm looking there. You go down a lot more. I'm going into the 6K range here. You got Tyler Hero at 6,900 against the Spurs. And that Butler news is going to be huge there because without Butler, that's just a real good spot for Hero. They're already down so many players, so he could possibly even start at that point. So that's someone I'm really interested in, especially with no DeJounte Murray on the other side. Go down a little more. You got Terry Rozier at 6,400. He had a pretty great game two nights ago, and I think people are more concerned with trying to stop Ball, and I think that opens up Terry's shot a lot more. And at that price, he can definitely smash that. You go down a little more. You got Jordan Clarkson at 5,800. He had a pretty good game. He stepped it up in the second half 2 nights ago, I believe. And with Donovan Mitchell out, it's just a great play. I don't think he'll crack the starting line, but you don't need him to. He gets his minutes from the bench. That's where he thrives. You go down more, at 4K, you got Sterling Brown. As long as he starts, that's a great cheap play against the Lakers, and I feel like even if it gets to blowout, he might get some run still there. And that's more or less about it.
Yeah, there's so many good options at shooting guard. It's actually kind of crazy. I don't know, because I don't want to give the viewers like 800 people to look at, but I mean, just some other guys right at the 8K range. Devin Booker is way too cheap at 8,400. He gets the plus matchup against Oklahoma City. Jalen Brunson obviously gets Sacramento. He's 7,900. Been playing extremely well without Luka Doncic. I expect that to continue. I mean, just a really, really good option. In the 6K range, you have 3 guys in a row that all come with well more than enough upside to beat their price tags. That's Cam Reddish, Hamidou Diallo, and Desmond Bane. I think of the 3, I probably like Bane the most, probably Diallo the second most, and then Cam Reddish the third. But that could change throughout the day. There's just, all 3 of them are really, really good options for the price tags. Also playing for Detroit, you have Frank Jackson, who's only a shooting guard at 5,300. Price is getting a little bit high, but it's not completely out of the range that I would be willing to play him. And then I think there's 2 just gross missed prices on this slate. Number 1, you could have set him at point guard. I was personally saving him for shooting guard, but that is Malik Monk. He's now back in the lineup. He played 35 minutes the other night. He also was locked into big minutes last night. The game's not over at the time that we're recording this, but I know that he already posted 20 plus points with the 4th quarter left. So he's been playing extremely, extremely well. He's only 4,000. And then right below him, you have Caleb Martin. Played bigger minutes last night with Max Struss entering the protocol. And that more or less will be the case again. If Jimmy Butler's out, I mean, Caleb Martin, who's probably already pretty close to a lock at 3,900, probably becomes like the chalkiest player most likely on the entire slate. If Jimmy Butler's in, you more or less can legit just play him if you want to. There's like no reason really not to at his current price tag. Obviously comes with ridiculous upside. I think he almost scored 50 the other night. So there's a lot. And a lot's going to change throughout the day as well. But we can move to small forward, break down who you're looking at here. I know that obviously Jimmy Butler, if he's starting, makes a great option after coming off of a massive game. And then, you also have Zach Levine and Jaylen Brown, who you already talked about. Saddiq Bey is finally up to about 8,000. But Go ahead and let me know who you're looking at here.
Yeah, Sadiq Bey, that price is really getting up there. You know, I mean, the minutes are there, but you're talking, you know, he needs 40 points just to hit base value right there. So I mean, I don't know if I'm gonna go there, but it's a reasonable option. And I was saving Reddish and Diallo for here, so that's okay. Again, you go down a little more. Marcus Morris Senior gets a pretty good matchup against the Celtics, and he had more or less a sailing game two nights ago. A lot of players are still out for them, so you know I expect this great playing to continue, and at that price, you know, just needs about 27 points, which I think is more than capable of. You go down a little more. Mikal Bridges is only 4,800. I feel like that's a little too cheap for him. More known for his defense, but if his shot is falling, that three shot, you know, there's a lot of upside to be had there. And they're missing Jay Crowder, so he's going to get a little extra bump in usage and minutes, I believe, with that. And next is Nasir Little, who also just had a monster game his last game, and he really wasn't priced up too much. 5K, he could easily smash that again. You know, that's an easy play for me. You got next up for me is Kyle Anderson. I believe my boy John Conchar just went into protocol, so you know someone's got to pick up those minutes, and they're already just bleeding so hard from those injuries right now. So I think the next man up there is Kyle Anderson. He might even move into the starting lineup, and 4,600 is just far too cheap. I know it's an ugly play, but at that price and the minutes that he's probably going to be playing, I mean, it's pretty easy. At that same price tag, you know, I'm going to go back to Phoenix again. Cam Johnson also gets a really good matchup. You know, he's been playing really well lately, and he gets a blowout run too. So, you know, it just makes a lot of sense to use him there. I was also saving Caleb Martin for here, but you know, again, I'm just going to reiterate, 3,900. Like that is a wild misprice, and even if Butler plays, like you said, that's just like a lock. The only other player I think I'm looking at there is probably Kenrich Williams at 4,000 for the Thunder. Sometimes he starts, sometimes he doesn't. You know, I guess it depends. We'll see if more guys get ruled out for them or not. But again, if his shot is falling, 4K is just far too cheap, and that's about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you nailed that. Not all that much to add. There's two players that I'm probably going to add. I do want to reiterate, Nasir Little's price tag is absolutely ridiculous. People kind of forget in the NBA when you have these top draft picks and they don't immediately come in and dominate when they're 19 years old. People kind of wash them away. They're immediately referred to as busts. They should get cut. They should go to different teams, blah, blah, blah. I hate that. That's not my style at all. They're 19 years old. They need time to develop. They're going to develop. They're very young. They're still early in their careers. Nasir Little is one of those players. He was a top draft pick, not literally the top, but I believe he was top 10. If not, he was, I'm pretty sure, lottery. And if I'm wrong on that, my apologies. Loved him at UNC. But, you know, he's finally finding his footing more in the NBA. He's scored 29 plus fantasy points in each of his last three. He's coming off a 48 fantasy point game. Portland has literally no bigs, so they're kind of running a small ball lineup. I believe Larry Nance Jr. is playing quite a bit of center. And if that's the case, you know, there's going to be rebound opportunities. Nasir Little's a guy that can contribute in each of the five categories. 5K is just a ridiculous price tag. I don't like the matchup against Utah. With that being said, I'm not going to shy away from it because the price tag is just awful. Another guy around this price that I add, Cam Johnson, another guy that played, obviously, his grad transfer year at UNC. But, you know, another first-round pick that kind of got flushed to the back, more or less, of Phoenix's roster. He's more or less a shooter. But he is playing bigger minutes. Jay Crowder's obviously out. He played 36 minutes in his last game. He scored 33 fantasy points. And Johnson's been fine on a per minute basis, a little under a fantasy point per minute on the season. And he's looked really good when he's gotten extended minutes, especially with the obvious ridiculous price tag of 4,600. So I do think that he is 100% viable in all leagues on this slate. The last guy that I will say is Chundi Brown. He's playing bigger minutes just because of essentially more or less they don't have anyone. He started the last game for the Hawks, 19 fantasy points in 30 minutes. That's nothing to write home about. It kind of is what it is, but at the same time, 3,300 and he played 30 minutes, and I don't believe he played a single minute in the fourth. So you can either take that as essentially one or two things. You had Malcolm Hill play the entire fourth. You could take that as they didn't trust Brown whatsoever, and they just wanted Malcolm Hill on the court at that point in time. Or you could take that as he has more upside because he only played 30 minutes and essentially still beat value at his price tag. He probably plays the fourth quarter in games moving forward, especially if he has to be locked into the bigger minutes. So, I mean, there's plenty of reason to use him. He also shot 1 of 7 and still scored 20 fantasy points. Essentially a 12-point loss. I know that some of the starters did play, so I'm kind of going back and forth as to whether I actually believe that they just wanted Malcolm Hill on the court or if they kind of didn't care at that point and they wanted to get Hill some minutes compared to Brown, who already played 30 in the game. I'm not 100% sure. I just know that at 3,300, it's not a very difficult price tag to beat. If his shot's falling, he does obviously come with significantly more upside than 20 fantasy points. And when you come with that low of a price tag, if you drop 30, you're going to be well ahead of a lot of other people. And I'm not necessarily sure how many people on this type of a slate where we've already said 50 salary relief options, how many people are going to be, dying to lock in Chundi Brown Jr. You know what I mean? It just doesn't make all that much sense. But very solid option, in my opinion. Moving to power forward, break down the position for us here.
Yeah. So with all this salary relief, you got to spend up somewhere, right? Yep. LeBron James is getting up there. He's almost 12K, but he gets a great matchup against the Grizzlies. And if he's going to play that forward or center position again, I'll take him all day against Steven Adams. So I think that's a great play up top. Kristaps Porzingis, that price is starting to get up there, but he's just performing very well. It's 9,400. He gets a great matchup against the Kings. I think 2 nights ago he had 20 fantasy points within the first 5 minutes of the game. So that's just wild. I'll take that upside all day. You go down a little more. Dorian Finney-Smith is 5,800. That price is getting up there a little, but they're just still really depleted, and his shot's been falling. So I'm more than willing to take a chance with him there. You go down a little more. Lou Dort, his price got bumped, and the game didn't even start yet, so that's wild. But with how depleted they are, and you said this before, he just takes really good shots. He either goes in for that layup or shoots that 3, and if it's falling, there's just massive upside with his blocks and rebounds and steals that he also gets as well. You can go down a little more here, and these are more value plays. We're just not going to run out of them. Killian Tilly for the Memphis Grizzlies is only 3,400. With all the injuries they got, he's been getting a little bit of run. I expect him to get a little bit more run. Just with all the extra added injuries that have been coming along. And that's a deep shot, but it could pay off. This next and last one, which I should have used the other night, with 8 and out, Jaylen Smith is only 3,400. I think he doubled the amount of points that McGee put up, and with less time, I think, on the court. So he's definitely worth a punt, especially if McGee gets into foul trouble. This guy is going to see the court. He can shoot the 3-ball too. He can get rebounds as well. So that's more or less about it.
Yeah, I generally hate to kind of really just, especially the night before, because so much can change, put myself into a position where I kind of convince myself I know exactly what I'm doing at a position. But realistically, I know exactly what I'm doing at this position. And, it's weird to say that. And obviously things can change. But I do feel really strongly about 2 plays. First one, you just talked about Jaylen Smith. The price tag's ridiculous. 3,400 is one of the worst price tags on the entire slate. He gets 20 plus minutes. He's going to beat value. He's another one of the first round picks that people really didn't give any time to develop. He didn't see the court all that much so far in his career, and people are just like, complete bust. Realistically, if he's on the floor, though, he's probably going to produce because that's kind of how the NBA rocks. And we kind of also know that just based around when he has been on the floor on the season, averaging over 1 fantasy point per minute. 28 fantasy points in 29 minutes in his last game. He posted 26 and 22 minutes earlier in December. Just because he's not getting the minutes right now doesn't really change all that much. The second play you also talked about, and it's spending up on LeBron James. The dude is doing literally anything he wants in the NBA right now. It's absolutely incredible to watch that he's this old and just dominating. I believe he has now hit 30 plus points in 8 of 8 games without Anthony Davis. That's not even including the fact that he can triple double on any given night. He'll add blocks, he'll add steals. The guy is a god of basketball, and 11,800 is definitely expensive, but he's pretty consistently been hitting 60 fantasy points anyway. And when you can lock in 60 fantasy points, even for the high price tag, it's just a great play, especially with the ceiling being closer to 70. I do agree Kristaps Porzingis makes a lot of sense. I think that you can go with someone like Keldon Johnson. Obviously, DeJounte Murray's out. Johnson does make a very solid option. He's still under 6,000 and comes with a lot of scoring potential. Matchup against Miami hopefully keeps his ownership down. I'm assuming that it will, just because people will see the red 6 and they'll kind of move off of him. That this isn't Miami though. This is Miami's backups, and although they're playing well, I mean, don't get me wrong, that team looks actually pretty good. Not really that worried about their defense. I think Lou Dort does make sense. Larry Nance Jr., I think you can go with, obviously, because he's locked into the big minutes because they basically have no bigs at this point. But I mean, I guess the only other guy that we didn't talk about that I will mention would be Marvin Bagley. I do want to see what happens with him last night. Obviously, we're recording this before the Sacramento game has happened, so I don't necessarily know if he played the bigger minutes because he's starting. But if he's starting again, and last night he played 25 to 30 minutes, I have no problems going back to him again because Bagley's another kid that can produce on a really great per minute basis. I think that's about it. I guess if you want to look at someone like Jalen McDaniels at 4,200, that does make sense. He's locked into bigger minutes as Charlotte continues to deal with all of their COVID struggles. But he's consistently post 20 plus fantasy points. The problem is I just don't think that you necessarily need to play him for 4,200 compared to some of the other players on the slate. And that's one of the big issues and why I feel relatively confident that I'll ultimately end up on LeBron James or Jaylen Smith here. Just because you're either probably going to the bottom of the barrel for the guy that can drop 30 for the low price tag, or you're moving up to the guy that most likely drops 60 plus, and you just spend up for him at this position based on, everything we know about all the other positions at this point. Center, a little shocking, not my favorite position. Usually I love center. Tonight, I don't necessarily think that it's great, but I am interested in hearing who you like at this position.
So there's a lot of it's not my favorite position of the night either, but I think I might possibly spend up a little here tonight. Again, with all the value we have, it should not be hard to fit these guys in. Rudy Gobert gets a very good matchup against a Portland team that Larry Nance is their big. I'll take Gobert all day with that. He should feast. He's 9,800. My only worry here is a potential blowout, but I don't really plan my lines like that. So, I mean, you really need Dame and Nasir Little to keep this game close, but this guy could easily put up 20 rebounds and 20 points before halftime. Just a really good matchup. You go down a little bit more. Nikolai Vucevic, only 9K. He had a ceiling game last game. I think he put up like 65 fantasy points. Just absolutely smashed. It's a really good matchup again. Clint Capella is their only true big, and he can't play all game. So, I really like the odds there. And then this guy, I can never get right. I feel like I played him the last time that he played the Hornets, but I might go back to him again today, and it's Miles Turner at 7,400. It's a little expensive, but if he plays like he should, it could turn out to be a really good play. I guarantee you he's going to be very low owned at that price range because he's not too high and he's not too low. So I think a lot of people are going to overlook him. You move down a little more. Steven Adams is someone that every time I look at him, I just go no, and then he just smashes and has a great game. Even when I look at his matchups and they're just not good matchups, he's there. He gets the rebounds, the blocks. He can add points too. So it's someone I'm definitely going to consider tonight. Not sure if I get there, but I do like it. You go down more. You got Omer Yurt 7. His price didn't go up much. It's only 4,600 against the Spurs, and he's going to get minimum 20 minutes a game with all their injuries right now, if not more. His foul trouble is worrisome, but if he can stay out of foul trouble, he can easily double as well. And then someone else that I was on the other night, and I think he's still a little cheap, is Mason Plumly. Gets a matchup against the Pacers. I do like Miles Turner, but I kind of like Plumlee here too with all the injuries they have. He's going to be forced into big minutes again. And that's more or less about it.
Yeah, I think you outlined it really well with plays that you definitely want to use. Mostly plays that I'm also considering. I do really like Miles Turner. I kind of want to put a little bit of emphasis on him. I will go into some grosser plays here to kind of make people think, because I do think that these guys are viable. Most likely you're going to be using them more in tournaments than you would be in cash games. But Rashawn Holmes gets a great matchup against Dallas. The problem is, when he first returned, I believe he played like 13 minutes, and he was out for quite some time with the eye injury. So I don't know if it was conditioning, coach's decision. I need to see what he did last night. Sorry that this is recorded prior to that game actually happening, but I need to see what he did last night. If he bumps up the minutes, he'll become one of the better players because he is too cheap if he's playing 30 minutes. We just don't necessarily know that at this point. As you keep moving down, Steven Adams, 100% agree. He's way too cheap. Plumlee and Yurtseven both way too cheap. But I do think you can go down a little bit farther. On the opposite side of the Sacramento game, you have Dwight Powell. Should be playing around 25 minutes just because they don't really have all that many guys. He does come with the upside. I don't necessarily love him, but if you get 25 fantasy points out of a guy that's only 3,800, you're not necessarily going to be mad at that or anything. Right below him, you have Luca Garza. Anyone that watches college basketball knows how crazy Luca Garza was at Iowa. Didn't project all that well to the NBA, but really he didn't project all that well for a dominant college basketball player either, and he was arguably the best player in the NCAA. He has the work ethic that kind of takes him above. He has the motor that keeps going. He just essentially tries harder than everyone. And it's kind of funny, but that is actually a really good trait to have. Like, you don't naturally have to be gifted like LeBron to make it in the NBA. If you're not, you obviously do need to try harder than everyone else. And Luca Garza is a king at doing that kind of thing. And don't get me wrong, very good player. Like, it's not like he isn't talented. It's just, obviously he works harder than other people, and that's how he kind of made it to where it was. But he played 20 minutes in his last game, took 14 shot attempts. That's the type of usage that he had at Iowa. It seems like he's just bringing it to the NBA, especially because Detroit has no one. They can give him the ball and they can just let him shoot. He scored 20 points on those 14 shot attempts. He has range to score at all three levels. I think that Garza is a solid option for 3,500. He just obviously comes with a ridiculous amount of risk because he might only play about 20 minutes. If you drop below that a little bit more, and man, we're getting into some weird plays here. Check Diallo. I mean, I don't necessarily want to do it, but similar to Garza, he's probably going to have to play around 20 minutes. And Diallo's not someone that's really new at this point to the NBA, right? Like at Kansas, he got suspended, was just kind of like whatever, done with college basketball. He was going to be or projecting to be in a first-round pick. That ended up not happening, and he's kind of just moved around the NBA for quite some time. But anytime that he's gotten minutes, he's absolutely dominated. He's really, really good on a per-minute basis. 19 minutes, 20 fantasy points in his last game. He's 3,300. So, like, if you're running a ton of lineups, I do think it's viable to add him to your player pool. If you're running one lineup, please don't play Check Diallo. That seems very obvious. Don't play Luca Garza if you're running one lineup. There's too many good plays to use guys like that. Those are obviously guys that are like GPP darts for if you're running even like 20 lineups. Maybe you throw them on one. If you're running 100, maybe you use them a couple of times, stuff like that. But they are extremely high point per minute players that if they happen to get more time, which it's not like Detroit has a ton of bodies at the moment. Like it wouldn't shock anyone, I don't think, if Garza came out and played 25, 30 minutes, right?
Right. No, yeah.
And the same can essentially be said for Check Diallo. If Luca Garza comes out and immediately fouls people, because that's what he does. He had 6 fouls in his last game in 20 minutes. That's why he didn't play all that much. Check Diallo is going to have to come in. Someone has to play center for him. Diallo is going to be that guy. So I feel like you're essentially betting on Garza to play minutes and not foul. And if you think that he's going to foul and put himself in a bad position, you're just betting on Diallo at that point. I've spent way too much time talking about Luca Garza and Check Diallo, though, because there are a lot of good plays that Spike outlined. I didn't want to just reiterate everything that he said. There are obviously better plays than those guys, but it's just something to think about, especially when building a lineup.
What's ironic is Diallo and Garza both fouled out their last game.
Yeah, that's kind of how they play, right? Like they're two guys that can score fantasy points in a hurry, but also foul. Like a lot of the players that can score fantasy points that fast, that aren't good players like LeBron and stuff. They foul a lot because they play so hard, right? And
they just have a lot of raw talent and just don't really know how to use it in all the right ways, I guess you could say. But from a fantasy standpoint, we really don't care about that. If you foul out in your 3K and you get me 30 fantasy points, you did your job for me. So
yeah, it doesn't even slightly matter.
Yeah.
But that's all we got for you guys. Again, let me know specifically about the injury report that we kind of do in the beginning of the show. If you just want me to go over like the questionable players and stuff, that would be really helpful. If you guys let me know. If no one says anything, I'm just going to continue the reading it out. But if enough people are saying that they don't want me to do that and you feel that you do want me to do it, make sure you put that, because if enough people say that they don't, I'm just going to stop doing it. Obviously, I'll do what the viewers want here. And let me know about Tim Tams. Also, Spike.
Yep.
Go buy some, try them, and we'll talk. We'll discuss at a later date of how Definitely. A+ they are. That's all we got for you. Again, if you like the video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. I will be back tomorrow for another podcast. Until then, good luck tonight.